Um, I'm just gonna get my camera angle right because there is definitely much else I can get wrong here. So, hello guys. I am a part-time comedian, and I'm here to put a positive spin on things in these depressing times. Do not be alarmed by what you see around you, because this is just stand-up comedy, but in a new normal. I am, to be honest, my entire comedy career has led to this moment because I always perform in empty rooms with virtually no audience and definitely without the sound of anyone laughing at my jokes. But I've managed to pull through. So basically, I'm saying that I was Atmanirbhar long before it was cool, right? But it's no longer cool to say that you're a part-time comedian anymore because everyone and their uncle is a part-time comedian now. Remember the good old days when everyone just used to be a marathon runner or a travel blogger, but now everyone's a part-time comedian, man. I mean, if you think about it, even full-time comedians have become part-time comedians now, right? But I've always wanted to be a part-time comedian long ago. So when I first felt the urge, like a good South Indian boy, I went up to my mom and I told her, and she said, "Son, if you want to do something, do it properly. No, don't do part-time comedy and all. Do full-time comedy." So I listened to her advice and I did engineering, which is the mandatory course that all comedians need to take because the degree is a joke. Okay. I won't make any cheap jokes or talk about depressing things like engineering. I think we should talk about more cheerful things and happy things like the time I got dengue fever. No, really, because that's the first time I felt I could be a part time comedian because I looked at dengue fever and I'm like, hey, there's potential here to make jokes. And this is true of all comedians, right? They look at a tragedy and they see material, right? If you think about it, comedians are actually very positive people, or they're borderline psychopaths, depends on how you perceive it. Because the problem is, once you figure out that you can mine material from tragedy, comedians just go looking for it and put themselves through extreme amounts of torture and pain. And I am told, and I believe this is true, that there are several people who actually put themselves through torture every day by tuning into news on Indian television. I mean, I can't put myself through such pain and all. I draw the line at dengue fever. Oh, by the way, it's pronounced dengue, not dengue. Whenever a Malayali is telling you how to pronounce a word correctly, the new normal is quite amazing, no? So anyway, I got dengue fever and I called up my parents because you're biologically programmed to love them. And the way you show that you love your parents is by calling them up every day and telling them what you ate for lunch. Because for some reason, this makes them happy. And this is true of all Indian parents, right? Because they always want to know what their children are eating. This is the premise that led to the invention of Instagram to begin with. Someone somewhere had a brainwave and he said, hey, this cool stereotype that we can make a product out of? Um, you realize we are in a corporate environment, right? We don't call it a stereotype, we call it a marketing insight. Okay, anyway, basically all Indian parents want to know what their kids are eating all the time. And that's what social media is, because you're furiously chronicling every single dish that you eat and your parents are commenting on it. You put up a picture of lasagna and your mother says, son, eat some bananas also, it'll help with your motion. But this particular time, I called my mom because for a different reason. I called her and I said, uh, see, the doctor thinks I have dengue fever. And she's like, no. I'm like, what do you mean, no? And she's like, I am praying for you, so it cannot be dengue fever. And I'm like, okay, now I have to confirm that it is dengue fever for science, right? And the way that they confirm that you have dengue fever is rather funny. They let you have extreme fever for 3 days. And then, as you're lying there on your deathbed, writing out your will, saying your parents can inherit all your EMIs, they administer a simple blood test. Right. And I got my test result and it said positive. And I'm like, hey, this is great news. I don't have dengue fever. Except the pathologist, he looked at me and he said, sir, no, positive means you actually do have dengue fever. I'm like, why? Like, why would this be so twisted? What is positive about someone having dengue fever? And he looked at me and he said, Sir, actually, if you think about it, you can make several jokes out of it. I am a part time comedian myself. That's my time. Thank you, guys.